Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. We are streaming live on Black Mental Health Matters Facebook, on United States of Africa, YouTube. We're streaming live also from LinkedIn. And today, I would first like to start by saying a Happy New Year and thanking all our fans and followers that have made 2021 a really fantastic year of expansion, of progress for Black Mental Health Matters. And please continue to follow and share and advocate and remove the stigma concerning mental health issues in our Black communities. And yes, it's an obligation we all have to keep on working for positive mental health and well-being for all people of African descent. And on this special edition today, we have here three special guests: Dr. Judith Bruce-Golding, Yolanda Dipheko, and Dr. Gullette Crosson. And they will be sharing with us tips and resolutions to improve mental health individually and also collectively in our communities for Black mental health. So I would love to start by asking Dr. Dawn, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Good morning, everyone. It's morning here. Good afternoon, where you guys are at. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And I would have to say, sister, you are the first person to pronounce my name correct. People usually jack up my name. So thank you for that proper pronunciation. So I'm Dr. Gullette Crosson. I'm a native of Philadelphia. So anyone that's listening that is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, whoop, 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 native Philadelphia. But I currently live in the capital of Pennsylvania, which is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My husband is originally from here. I am a certified trauma therapist and a licensed psychologist, and I've been in the field since 1996. Though I primarily focus on trauma, I do treat the full gamut of mental health disorders. I run an outpatient clinic, which is a for-profit clinic that my husband and I own, but we also have a nonprofit, which is called the Harrisburg Area Learning Academy. And that's an umbrella that treats trauma as well. And under that umbrella, we have small programs, but our two major programs is our family-based program that actually goes into the home and provides trauma-focused CBT to families and children that are involved with our children and youth program. And then we have a trauma recovery center, which we are the first trauma recovery center in all of Pennsylvania. And we are 34th in the nation. And we've been up and running since July of this year. So that's what Dr. Dawn does in a nutshell, is I treat trauma. And I also am very active in my church as well.
Thank you so very much for this amazing work you're doing.
Thank you.
And then I hand over to Dr. Judith Bruce-Golding.
Yes. Thank you. Hi, Dr. Dawn. I tell you, hands up to the work that you are doing in your space. I mean, just fantastic. So yes, I'm Dr. Judith. I'm based in the UK, West Midlands. So it's good to be here. A bit about me. I do have my fingers in a lot of different pies, which I'm interested in. So I'm a part-time research fellow with the University of Southampton, and we're looking into epilepsy. I'm also a mental health first aid trainer, so I support people in their journeys to being able to recognize the signs of mental health. I'm also a suicide first aid tutor, associate tutor, where we support people in also identifying the signs of suicide and being able to keep someone safe for up to 24 hours. I'm passionate about mental health and well-being. I'm also working on my sign language, British Sign Language level 3. So I think just a lot of my background has just been associated with breaking down barriers. So I've worked with children and families who were, excluded from the school system in the UK for over 8 years. And recently I've been working within disabilities, working with children, young people and adults with a range of disabilities, including autism, and just working independently as well. So on the side, I'm working within the community. Myself and my colleague have a community organization called Nakuona, which means ICU. And we just work within the community on a range of projects through using creative approaches to address some of the traumatic situations that we're experiencing. So always good to be here, and just, sharing our experiences of what we're doing in our own spaces.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I certainly wish a lot of success and blessings to all sisters and brothers who are, and other genders who are providing Black services. We need to support our Black organizations. We need Black solutions. And I think it's so important that you have ventured into this area of support of producing services for our people. Thank you so much. In the meantime, Sister Yolanda is also with us. Welcome. And can you hear me? Sister Yolanda? Okay, I think she says she's having some network connectivity issues. Can you hear me, Sister Yolanda?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, fantastic. Yes. Then I would like to please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do. Welcome to Black Mental Health Matters show.
Hello, my name is Yolanda, and I'm a psychology graduate that's been working as a recovery coordinator for the last year. So I support people who've got substance misuse issues, and they experience a range of other issues like homelessness, domestic violence. So that's what I do, and I like to call myself a mental health advocate as well. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome. So now we start to talk about, every year it's the same thing. We start the new year, and a lot of us like to work on New Year resolutions. Having something to give the year a kind of sense of purpose, something which will keep us on track. And I would first address the first thing to Dr. Dawn. What do you have to say about resolutions generally? What has that got to do with mental health?
So generally, resolutions, about 90% of them fail. And what we have found is that it fails because resolution itself, procrastination is built into it. We're waiting for the new year to start this new life or these new patterns. And, and it's unrealistic. It's as if we treat the new year as if it's magical, as if it's some kind of magical power with unicorns and fairies and whatnot. And so the word resolution itself tends to have procrastination built into it. And so what we find is that we build these huge, lofty goals for ourselves, and it's just not realistic. And so that's what I would like to start off with. I like to say that I have some goals that I'm looking to achieve in the next year versus resolutions. And I try to keep them realistic and specific, and I try to look at where I'm at in the moment. So I'm not going to set a goal to work out. Now I do work out every day, but I have clients that say, I'm gonna work out every day, and I'm like, you don't even like to walk to the car after session. You think that's a realistic goal? So we want to, I try to make my goals realistic and specific and not too big, and break them down into smaller steps. So that's what I want to start off with.
Fantastic. So maybe we start with you then. Your first tip would be?
My first tip would be consider whatever goals you have for the new year, consider breaking them into smaller steps. So if you say, I want to lose 50 pounds, for example, or if you say, I want to work out I want to work out every day this year, start off saying, okay, I'm going to at least do 15 minutes a week, something like that. Break it down small so that by the end of the year, you could add on to that 15 minutes and then add on to those days. Then you may get to 5 to 6 days by the end of 2022. But if we start off in 2022 saying, I'm going to do 6 days, you already know that ain't going to work, right? Especially if you haven't been active, right? And so I would say, consider whatever goal you have, break it down into smaller steps. There's nothing wrong with having a goal. And if you want to call it resolutions, there's nothing wrong with having resolutions, but just make sure you have some smaller steps to get there. And then make it realistic. You know, again, we think that the new year have unicorns and fairies, and we're just going to suddenly turn into the new person. I'm going to give up ice cream. You eat ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you know you're not giving up ice cream the next day. There is no magic. There's no pixie dust in a new year, right? It's fun. It sounds great. It's new. And of course, it's an opportunity to do things differently, right? But let's be realistic. So if you're a big ice cream eater, then say, you know what? I'm going to limit myself to 1 bowl of ice cream a day versus breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So those are some examples of that. And then make goals specific. I often hear clients in sessions say things like, I'm going to be healthier this year. What does that mean? What does healthier mean? Because healthier may look different from me versus you. And so break that down. What would you like to see differently? Well, I eat junk food all the time. Okay, well then maybe add a piece of fruit to your diet. That's beginning the steps of healthiness versus trying to cut out all of those things. And if we're thinking about mental health, then I would also think about my boundaries. A lot of times I have clients come in with really poor boundaries because with sexual trauma and physical abuse, boundaries are an issue, right? Our bodies have been violated. So therefore we don't really know where we begin and where someone else ends, right? And so I'll hear people say, this year, I am not going to be a doormat. I am going to stop saying yes to everything. Now, you didn't just say yes to 5 things on the way to session. That's why you were late. So that's not realistic. So what can we do a little differently? And so what I teach people is say, let's break that down to something smaller. I work with boundaries a lot. So this is something I can roll off the top of my tongue. I'll say things like, you're not going to say no. So why don't we say, I'll get back to you? And they love it because I'm not at no yet, but I'm getting there. It's a baby step. So they'll start off with, you know what? I'm going to get back to you on that request. And then eventually they get the strength to start saying, well, I went back, I thought about it. It doesn't fit into my schedule. It's something I don't really want to do. It doesn't serve me. So then they can practice saying no. So those are my tips and my tips and my steps for anyone listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Judith and Yolanda, you have comments to that?
Yes, I totally agree with Yolanda's, this small baby steps. And I think to add to that, I think what we don't want is to be in a position that you think the first 2 weeks in January, you feel like you've failed. And so, like you said, sometimes we can set these big resolutions and say, we're going to do this, we're going to change. And then we just stepped into, oh, I didn't do it. So we're back into that mindset of you setting this amazing challenge. And then the cycle of, see, you'll never do that. Why, you set resolutions and then you never achieve them. So I think, as well as that, I think it's about understanding yourself, who you are and your tendencies. So you also have that backup to think, well, this is me.
Know
like
yourself.
So if you have the tendency to, it's hard to say no. Like you said, Dr. Dawn, looking at what could you say to address that, because if that's in your nature to do that. So I think it's about the words, being kind to ourselves. That's the core of how I think this year should be in as we set these goals, so that we avoid that sort of, you're a failure, you can't do this, you can't do that. And we're bringing ourselves to a mindset where we think, okay, well, that was my target, but I did some of this. And looking at the actual efforts that have been made in achieving. So if your target was, 10 and you get to 3, that means you've started. So I think sometimes, and then you can build up. So each day you're improving. So I think to me, it's all about, for me, it's about being kind to myself, understanding my tendencies, and and also when it comes to mental health, I've just put down some notes about just being able to connect, the importance of connecting with nature and seeing that there's a bigger world out there to support. You know, we've got our existence, but it's important to see that there is a amazing, beautiful, bigger world outside of us. And if you miss something for one day, you've got later on in the afternoon, or you've got tomorrow. So it's about looking at how we can actually be kind to ourselves.
I totally agree as well. I feel like with my resolutions in the past, it's definitely like a all or nothing mentality that you have. You know, if you're not able to achieve the totality of what you wanted to do, it becomes very easy to kind of like make excuses not to go back and try again. So that's just something that I'm going to be trying to, you know, hold myself more accountable. Like maybe just going to the gym with a friend instead of going by myself, because that's somebody else who's going to help me to be accountable, I think, for that goal. But I think also that I can work the opposite way of them. I'm not being as motivated, but I think it's definitely better to have that support system in the little bits that we want to achieve as well.
And that's the research, Yolanda. The research shows that when we buddy up with someone, like have an accountability partner, especially with fitness and whatnot, it increases our chances of meeting our goal. Because if nothing else, we don't want to let the other person down, or just that social interaction, you know. And you know, one of the reasons why I started off with exercise is because that is one of the free antidepressants that we so ignore. Nutrition and exercise are really beneficial to mental health, to healing trauma symptoms, to helping ourselves get our bodies in a space to reset and recover. And so I think that's awesome that, you know, when you're talking about the workout partner and stuff like that.
Very important. And I loved what you said also about connection to nature, because this is one aspect that we forget. First, sometimes we forget that we're connected to a greater source.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is such an important aspect for people of African descent, that in all our traditions, this connection to each other and to nature, to create, to the source of creation, that it's something we forget, and we need to practice that daily by, like you said, going into nature, taking those walks, by meditating, by you know, going inside ourselves, and nourishing that part. Thank you. Do you want to go on to your tips, Sister Yolanda?
Oh yes, my tip. So like I said, just to try and avoid this all or nothing trap, maybe, you know, when you do that little bit, note it down. I like to keep like a little journal of like things that I'm doing, so I can track my fitness or like my food or what I'm eating. And I find it's really helpful, even if I haven't achieved all of my goals, to see that little bit that I've done so far. It really keeps me like focused and on track. Some of the other tips that I have is like planning and organizing. I think what you were saying earlier about the nature and going outside and making sure that we have time, I found that it's really easy for me to make excuses not to go for a walk or a hike, because it doesn't seem a priority, and I always have to rely on a spontaneous outing with other people. But I found if I just set myself time aside, let's say maybe like once every 6 weeks, I'll set some time aside to do this. I think that could be helpful to make sure that I'm sticking to my resolutions. But yeah, those are my 2 tips.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I totally agree with that. And journaling is very important. It's such a simple thing, but we do forget how therapeutic that could be, you know?
And I think it goes into what you said earlier, sister, about inside, like, because a lot of times we are disconnected from ourselves. And
Right.
we're not aware. So the journaling, the nature, the walks, all of those, the working out, those are ways that we can reconnect with ourselves. So I think that it all kind of comes full circle back to what you were saying, like being self-aware, because we get so disconnected, you know. mental health can cause us to get disconnected from what's going on internally, and we'll get sometimes caught up with our mental perceptions of the external. And it's important to be able to reconnect with ourselves, and those things that you guys are mentioning are phenomenal ways to get that connection back into flow.
Thank you.
I agree. I think, as Yolanda said, even when you talked about keeping a note, I think as well, keeping a note and also verbally bigging yourself up and saying, well done, you've done this today, and having that moment where you celebrate yourself, because I think sometimes, I know I've been working on it to not just be focusing on the things that I didn't achieve, but look at what have I done today, and getting myself into a pattern of thinking that I can reflect on the day and think, okay, brilliant, you didn't do everything, but you've done this, which is great. To then plan for tomorrow. And if you didn't do it, being kind to yourself, you can then schedule in a time to do what you need to do. And like you said, if you've got a friend or someone to motivate you, if you're feeling that you haven't got that motivation, then it's about reaching out and asking for support from a friend. But I think that's the thing. It then goes back to your confidence in even being able to say to someone, I'm feeling like my motivation is low, and actually recognizing that, instead of then being in that pattern of just negative thinking that you can't do it and you feel fearful about sharing it. So I think that's an important thing about, being able to use our friendship networks, being able to be open enough to say what's really going on so that we can get that support.
Thank you. Please turn off your calls and texts, if you are using mobile device. There's some background noise. Yes, it's better. Yeah, that's fine. So,
Yeah, something.
we do the best we can. Okay. Another point. Now we're entering the new year, and we are still in this pandemic, which is, bringing so much uncertainty, anxiety, panic and fear. Yeah. And a friend wrote to me and said, I'm in the new year and I jumped in, and I would like to see that I've left Corona pandemic behind me. What is going on right now with this, and what can we do to maintain our mental health and psychological well-being in these times of uncertainty, in these times where the pandemic is bringing such a divide in the community? Those who are vaccinated, those who are not vaccinated, what can we do in these times? Please mute your mics if you are not speaking.
Yeah, well, I think it's true. I think what you mentioned, that with the pandemic and everything going on, it can be something that can divide families, because it's an independent decision that people have to make. And that also can, that I've seen divisions within families and communities. But I think my main focus would be on supporting the mental health and well-being of that person. So if we can overlook that, whether people have different perspectives on the pandemic, and looking at how are you coping, because we know that being within our houses 24/7 is not a healthy way of living. And I find that, because I also am a text counselor, so people text in, and that's a big thing that people have felt, that you're confined to this space. They're not getting out, they're not going out, even just a little walk. And these are things that we talk about. What can we do? What can individuals do to look after their mental health? A 2-minute, 5-minute walk down the road and back out again can make a difference, because you're getting out of that space. And I think it's been mentioned anyway before in our discussion about the importance of having that social network and not going through this stress, anxiety and uncertainty alone. So I think to be reaching out to the people that we are close to and having that interaction is really, really important at this time. And hopefully if the discussions about the pandemic result in arguments and conflict, maybe it's something that should be avoided, and we just focus on how are you as a person. That's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dr. Dawn, as a trauma therapist, what do you have to say? This is a traumatizing experience for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so, we can talk about that forever, right? That could be like a series, right? But one of the things I say to all of my clients, whether they're experiencing trauma or whether they don't have trauma in their history, is that just like fear is contagious, so is joy. And so find those small things that you can focus on that bring you joy, whether it's the fact that I have had more time with my family than I've had in a long time, because like you said, it's not healthy to be in the home 24/7, but there are some benefits to that. Some of us have gotten more rest. Now I wasn't one of them to get more rest because the therapy sessions went up, virtual sessions went up, but there were a lot of people that reported getting more rest, more quality time with family members, more alone time with their spouses. And so find joy, find the joy. Like Dr. Bruce-Golding pointed out, there's ways to celebrate ourselves and others. And we have to look at those things because the pandemic may not be going away at any time soon. And so at some point it's a reality, and those feelings need to be validated. So I'm not saying ignore the feelings that you have. By all means, you have to acknowledge those feelings, and you have to allow yourself to feel them and then sit in them without judgment, because there's no healing that can occur when we're judging ourselves for the way we feel. It just can't happen. Our bodies stop growing when we ourselves are the judger, right? And so, yes, acknowledge, validate, sit in them, don't avoid, sit in those moments, sit in those feelings. But at some point, give yourself a personal deadline for how long I'm going to sit into this feeling. So if I acknowledge that I'm having anxiety about the pandemic, it doesn't seem to be getting better, and I have gotten the vaccination, right? So I have anxiety. You acknowledge that, you label it as anxiety, you allow yourself to feel it. You may want to journal those feelings, but don't avoid the feeling by like immediately doing something else or trying to do something joyful. That's not healthy. So allow yourself to sit with it. But the time that you sit with that feeling is going to be relative and personal to you. So you may say, I'm going to sit with this for the next 20 minutes, journal what I'm feeling about it, and then I'm going to go on to something healthy, productive that I enjoy. Or someone else may say, today is a day where I'm going to allow myself to feel this, and I'm going to care for myself in this state. It really depends on a person. So I'm not saying avoid those feelings. It's very important to acknowledge those feelings, but then find joy. There is so much joy in our lives, whether it is nature, whether it is the opportunity to watch our favorite show nonstop, whether it is the fact that I can exercise more or I can eat my favorite foods without judgment because I'm home. Who knows what your joy is, but find it, because it's just as contagious as fear.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, because this is something that we often forget, how important it is that we radically take care of ourselves, that we're compassionate with ourselves and with each other. Thank you so much. We have another problem, and that is the racial injustice. The inequalities which affect us on a community level, and which leads to another aspect of distress. Dear Yolanda, can you please say how could we address these issues in the new year? What kind of commitments or tips do you have that we could use to address things which are outside our individual power, which
Sorry, sister. I have to ask you to repeat yourself. I'm really struggling with the sound. My ears are.
Oh, okay. I was saying that we have the problems of. Can you mute your mic if you're not speaking? Thank you. Yeah, I was saying that we have the question or the issue of racial injustice, of inequalities, which are structural problems that weigh on us individually and cause a lot of distress. So often people feel powerless and say, I can't do anything about the way I feel because I'm experiencing something which is due to my surroundings, to my environment, So I was asking, like, what type of commitments can we make, and what kind of tips or experience do you have in that area?
I think sometimes when we encounter this, one of the worst things that you can experience is not so much the actual act of aggression or racism. It's just maybe the idea that somebody might invalidate how you're feeling about that experience. So I found that having somebody close to me that I can speak to, who has an understanding of, you know, of my everyday experience and, like, you know, my race, they're gonna make me feel you know, listened to, and that, you know, that experience did happen. Because I think one of the most damaging things that can happen is to kind of like be made to feel like what you've experienced is not important or it's not damaging. So I think having really close people to you to talk to about those situations is really important. I think having the confidence as well to call it out if, you know, if when it does happen, so that we're dealing with things as, you know, as they're happening with us. But I know that sometimes it may be better to kind of take yourself away from a situation, think about it for a while, and then you know, respond in a way that, you know, you're not going to be you know, going to be angry to the fullest degree at the time. But I'm an inclusion and diversity champion in my role as well. So I find that having people in the workplace who are specifically there to kind of listen to people and kind of like share concerns in the workplace is a really helpful thing to have, you know, when people are encountering racism and just, you know, general structural racism in the workplace and everyday life.
Thank you so much. Yeah, any comments to that or additions?
Yeah, I think I think what you said is important, that about the importance of listening to that experience from that person. Because I think that, like you said, Yolanda, the thing is, if someone thinks, is it this in my mind, is this really happening, all of that is adding to that individual's psychological distress. So when we can have that conversation about the realities of inequality for Black people and people of color, as well as the other marginalized groups, when we have more of that, when we think about intersectionality, you know, we see how deep this distress, this psychological distress, can be for that individual. So I think for me, it's as you said, Yolanda, it's about listening to that person, acknowledging what they are saying is true for them. This is their experience, and we relate. We understand. You know, we won't understand everything, but we understand the journey and what inequality can look like, as well as it being experienced differently for each individual. But I think it's important that we do validate and let those people know that we are there for them, and we can do whatever we can do our best to support them at that time. But I think conversation is important, as well as looking at solutions. What practically can we do on the external side, but also internally, because that constant distress is, as we know, is not healthy. And then adding on top of homelessness or the day-to-day, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I love. I guess I have some feedback there. Sorry. And I love how you brought up the fact that not validating our experiences or the other person's experiences, how it can increase our psychological distress or the person's psychological distress. And I feel, you know, like the video that you presented earlier, sister, before we got on and started that video about mental health, about just the residual effects of slavery itself presents African-American people and, you know, Black people throughout the diaspora at a disadvantage in terms of trauma, because the residual effects of slavery has trickled down in all of our families, right? And I think sometimes our nation, and I'm speaking generally, right? Our world can gaslight us. You know that word gaslighting, and saying, well, that's not really how it happened, or that's not what what that was supposed to do, or it wasn't that bad, and have us, am I going crazy, within our workforces, when you see the discrimination and it's clear, but because they're not using a racist term, you can't really put your finger on it, and when you point it out, it's like, yeah, no, that's not what's going on. It really has something to do with performance. Well, I outperformed her last quarter and she still got the promotion. On every level, I've excelled, with the exception that I'm not white. So come on, help me out here. And so I feel like in many instances, our nations, our workplaces that are predominantly that are not predominantly African descent have gaslit us into believing that it's not real, it's not happening, that this racial discrimination isn't happening, and that can cause so much internal stress. Black women are the only people that, as our social economic status gets higher, our mental health and our physical health declines. No other people, as they make more money, get sicker. No other people, as they make money, get worse in their mental health or physical health, but us, and I definitely think it has a lot to do with this whole idea of our experiences aren't real or valid. And we're hearing that constantly, sometimes even within our own race. So I'm gonna get off that preaching block because I'm about to preach.
Yeah, I think it's so true. What you've just said, just if you're striving, sometimes you can then sort of, when there's not people that look like you as the high, you get higher in your career, then I think then that also there's almost these psychological fireballs coming from different angles at different parts of your career journey. And I think the thing is, it's great to talk about it. It's good to discuss, because if you're on your own and you're not sharing about these things, or you think, is it just me? Is it, I'm oversensitive or taking things the wrong way? Years and years of that kind of thinking, you may get to where you are in your career, but then, like you said, the psychological demise of that Black woman, you think, what an existence. You're striving, it seems positive, but at the same time you're still managing your psychological state is in a constant state of distress. Or then I suppose you can choose to pretend it's not there,
but then it still tears you up, it wears you down. Exactly. Right? Because internally you're carrying this burden, because it's important to release it and express it. Sister, I think you were on mute earlier when you were talking.
Oh yes, I was. Thank you. Yeah, what you brought up actually reminded me of what Dr. Kevin Washington has said and defined as pest. That is this persistent enslavement, systemic trauma, which is still there, which still has to be dealt with. And he says it's not a question of post-traumatic slave trauma, but it's perpetual, it's persistent still and ongoing. And we have to address that. I would like to thank again our viewers and ask you to send us comments, send us questions, let us know where you're watching from. Yes, very good. Okay. Dr. Dawn, you have also started your own business, offering your own services. Can you tell me on this level, because part of the distress is also a lack of empowerment.
Yes.
So having services, Black-led services, is so important. Can you say something about the challenges? What can we do in the new year to support those who are offering services? Your services are being offered in Harrisburg, you said?
Mm-hmm. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Which is a predominantly
Caucasian area. Mm-hmm.
Yes. What does that implicate?
Sister asked the kind of questions that are like loaded, right? It's like a loaded baked potato, right? You're like, oh, come on, sister. That's like a 7-day series. But so let me start with the reason. My husband actually was the one that propelled me into going into business for myself. And the reason was sort of what we were talking about. I had gotten to a ceiling in my in the job that I was at. I had already had my doctorate. I don't know how many years I had my doctorate, and I was licensed. I don't remember how many years. And the only next step for me was to apply for this clinical director position, which I was qualified for. However, all of the clinical directors did not look like me. They were white men, older white men, balding white men. And here I'm black. So, you know, I'm black. I got these. I didn't have sister locks yet, but I was wearing naturals. And so I applied for this position, very qualified, and I got turned down. And they said that they wanted to hire this other gentleman who from Boston, who was very astute in doing autism. But I had done autism for 15 years. So I said, okay. So they hired him, and they wanted me to train him. And at that point, my husband was like, no, let's go. You have to go. Isn't that crazy? I'm not qualified for the job, but I'm qualified to train him. Right. And so it was horrendous. And it was no need to even have that conversation then about, I don't think I was in a space that I would have been able to have that conversation without Philadelphia Dawn coming out, right? Bonquisha, I call her Bonquisha coming out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it just because there wasn't going to be any validation of it, but it was clearly, it was a lot of racial stuff going on there. So my husband was like, it's time for you to move on. And I first opened my private practice as a result of that. And the God is so good, because the private practice opened with a waiting list, because we had so many people in the area that I had treated prior to this job that were coming, either having children and wanted the children to have services, or were coming back to get some more services. And the trauma in this area, this is a small area. Harrisburg proper is about 50,000. However, the per capita though, we experience more trauma in this area than even Philadelphia. So 1 in 52 people will be somehow traumatized within the Dauphin County system. And that's greater than the Philadelphia area, right? So that's ridiculous. When you think about 50,000 people, that's crazy, right? And so it was, you know, and they were looking at that time, people were looking for services from people of color, African. We don't have a lot of representation, period, in the field, but we definitely don't have it here. And so it really worked out where I was able to start my services and actually be able to increase and treat predominantly people of color. I take everyone, but I was able to take a lot of people of color, African American, Hispanics, and help them get the services they need and connect after they finish with me. With the nonprofit is where I started to see a lot more of the racial pieces come into play, because we are 99.9% African American and or Hispanic. And so there are other agencies here that are Black, but they don't offer the same type of service. But for some reason, the white agencies or the county or folks in the county that support us tend to, I feel like, look at us, hold us at a different bar than I feel like my white counterparts. And so yes, there have been Black agencies in this area that may not have done as dealt as honestly as they should with finances, right? But there's also white agencies in this area that didn't deal as honestly with finances. So don't try to make it seem like it's a Black thing, right? But so we tend to stand out a little bit more. And I feel like we tend to get scrutinized a little bit more, questioned more, not as much liberties as other programs. But then we do have a big advocate in the county as well. A lot of people that are rooting for us that are various ethnicities, because they know that the services are quality and needed. So I think that, it has been a struggle, definitely has been a struggle. But what I found to work as a businesswoman is to really put it on the table, just put it out there. A lot of people say, why would you do that? They're not going to own it. I don't care if they own it. I want them to know I see them. I want them to know I see what you're doing. You ain't got to own it, but I want you to know I see what you're doing, so that one, I can take it to prayer, because I'm a firm believer that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And the God that I serve, he's put me here to help people. And so he's going to make sure it happens. But I want you to know I see what you're doing. I'm not stupid. I'm not blind.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It was important for me to ask that question, because here, for example, in Germany, you have Black health professionals trying to do something, but they are themselves being restricted by the system. And when we talk of mental health, it affects not only it also affects us as professionals. And these are one of the factors and the challenges, how we deal with them, how we see solutions, possible solutions is also very important, I think. To see, okay, instead of fighting within a white institution, set up your own, because we cannot remain in these violent atmospheres.
Right,
And we can, and to see a Black woman doing that, all three of you, it's really amazing, and it has to be stressed how fantastic that is.
So I would tell anybody that's trying to do that, level up. Make sure the services that you offer are always working to progress, because I think sometimes we can get complacent, like, oh, I open my business. No, stay trained, stay up on the latest research, level up, because honestly, they are going to scrutinize your program more because it's brown, so level up, not just for that, but level up so that you can bring the best to our community, because we need it. So I would say level up, and then find advocates within your county, within your community, because like I pointed out, some of the resistance, but there's a huge group of people within the community, within the county, the same county that is our funders, that are advocating for us. And they're not just Black people. There are other people out there, white, that just want to see these services offered. So link into those advocates, create your support system within that within your advocates, because those are going to be the ones that's, when you're not at the table, they're saying, no, this program is doing the work. I know, because X, Y, and Z. The last thing I would say is try to find, whatever you're doing, try to find a model that has done it before, that meets the criterion of the people that you're serving. So the model I use, all the models that I use are empirically evidence-based models that have been used with people of color and African Americans and Africans, right? So not only is the model relatable, but we already have research out there, right? So that way, when someone comes and says, oh yeah, your program is just like some homeboy corner store program, you're like, no, I have pre and post data. No. I have my research right here. I use empirically evidence-based research, and I have data to collect that. So I just say level up with supports, level up with the program, level up with the data.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I was going to say that's so inspiring. What a great role model you are, especially where you're located and the work that you're doing. But you can see that things will just naturally happen. So you're probably a bit small organization, but look at how you're drawing people naturally to what you're doing. I wrote down a question just about how do you manage with the scrutiny? Were you expecting it? Yeah, but how the real life of managing, you've opened your business, you're doing this, and then you got people picking at.
I don't think I always managed it well, because I am I can be a little bit of a hothead, and I can use words, I can use words, right? And so I don't know that I've always managed it well. But two things I've learned is that you don't have to like me, but you're going to respect me. And the way that the respect that I garner is by doing the work, being present, being connected, being supportive to other African-American and people of color organizations, having that listening ear, and then also being able, like I surrounded myself with work, because we are small, but I have really good people working for me. And I surrounded myself with people that I could send to certain meetings that I know that if I show up, it's just not going to go well, So I'm going to send my assistant clinical director, or I'm going to send my clinical director, because her personality is going to work this out. And then she can bring the data back to me, and then we can work on that, So I would say that I had to have layers between me and certain, not everyone, some people I can manage, but certain people are in positions and they don't even realize the microaggressions that they utilize. They don't even realize the racial words and how they're coming off. And it just sends me somewhere. I have to really go to the Lord. And so when in my prayer time, one of the things God gave me was like, you have support, use your support. And so I had to surround myself with people that strengthen my weaknesses, because no matter how, I'm not a superwoman. I'm not a superwoman. I am human like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like I'm a phenomenal woman by God's grace, but I'm not impenetrable. I'm not a superwoman. And so therefore I need help. So I had to surround myself with people that strengthen my weaknesses. You go deal with the racist person. Go deal with the racist person, because I can't today.
Yeah. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful, and an important strategy for survival. And that is surround yourself with people who strengthen your weaknesses.
Yeah.
This is simply fantastic, because I have that as well. I'm quite straightforward in my approach, and sometimes you do need someone else to go in and do that negotiation, or make that talk on your, who's more equipped with the skills to do that.
Yes. But
how do you approach such situations, Yolanda?
Hello, was that to me? Yeah, sorry, I'm just really struggling with the sound. What was that, sister, again? You're muted, I think.
I was just asking you to add to Dr. Dawn's statement, which she said, support yourself with those who strengthen your weaknesses as a mental health strategy.
Sorry. Sister?
Yes, there's a problem with the network. So I think it's difficult.
Just a little bit, sorry.
Yes, not a problem.
Yolanda, maybe we can type it in the chat for you, okay?
Yes.
We hear from you. So I'll type it in the chat for you.
Thank you, dear. Okay. So while you're typing, then I just want to come back to Dr. Judith and the question of children and mental health.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that like Doctor said as well, that's a series, isn't it? Children and mental health. And I think it's a tough one, because during this time, we are in a time of instability with the virus and children not going to school, and there's so many different certainties that have become uncertainties for them. And I do think there's a lot of web-based or apps that young people seem to be using more, especially because I do text counseling. They are inundated with young people who are trying to talk about their mental health. And I think it's looking at different ways that young person can express how they feel, because they're not always going to be able to know how they feel and say what they feel. And I think it's another way of using the phones that they've got to be able to access mental health apps such as Kooth, Calm. There's a lot of apps out there now that might be another way of that young person expressing what they're feeling, especially if there are, say, unhealthy situations happening within the home, if there's domestic violence or they feel cornered, there's nowhere for them to go. So if they have access to online apps, that might also be an opportunity for them to get the support they need, as well as their own networks. But I think first and foremost is trying to help them to communicate how they feel, but also seeing that, every person has their own way in how they can communicate.
So communication is the key. And how can we as parents cater for improve the mental health situation for our children? How can we help them communicate? One thing I think is more, what I heard often from my daughter, is how important it is to listen as a first step.
And I think as well, listening without providing the solution, because I think as adults, we naturally have that fix it. You've got a problem. This is, as soon as a young person starts talking, we've got there now. We know what they need to do. And we have to see that we are not them. And it's their experience So it's almost
Yes.
like being able to bat it back. What do you think might help you at this time? And I think that's one thing I've learned, to see that as an adult, I might have been through this and that, but my experience is not going to be the experience of a young person,
Okay,
of a
right.
child. So I can't use, I can't put my brain into theirs to say you need to do that, because it could be a totally different life experience. So I think the listening is important, but also asking, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to support you more in this? And almost empowering them on their journey, instead of saying, right, you need to do A, B, and C. And it's like,
Right,
what?
right.
You don't even, where did that come from? Well, it's come from my lived experience. And it's like, hey, this is my lived experience. So, so I think,
Listening without providing solutions.
yeah, but
Yeah.
supporting them in finding what their solutions might be. And I think
Mm,
that's a big life lesson for me.
thank you. And in crisis situations, we've had some parents who have children with suicide ideation and things like that. What is the important to do when there's such a major crisis in the family?
I know we haven't got long, but I think it's being able to talk. The first thing that came to my mind is being able to say the word suicide and have that conversation, because we don't talk about it in the homes. Then it's almost like there's a fear about even having that conversation. And for us to remember, suicide ideation is the thought, it's not the action yet. And I think that's important for us to see that, okay, that's at the beginning of that continuum. So let's talk about it. But if they're
Okay.
not in a home situation where they feel they can even say the word, it's almost like the doors are shut already. So I think as adults, we need to take that first step in having that conversation about talking about suicide and how they might be feeling.
Thank you so much. So for a crisis situation concerning suicide, don't panic. Listen and talk. Thank you so much. I think Yolanda is available now.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Dr. Dawn, for messaging me that question. Would you like me to answer that now, sister? Or
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, okay. So I think, like I already mentioned, an inclusion and diversity champion in my role. So in terms of managing, workplace discrimination, with mental health, I think it's really important to be able to call out things when they happen as they happen, because I think it's really easy to forget as well that sometimes when people are being discriminatory or racist, or it's because maybe they're ignorant. So I think in the context of the workplace, it's always really important to have a conversation with somebody, saying, listen, this has happened, I think X, Y, Z, and just kind of give them the opportunity to share why they've said that or they've done that, because I think we can get lost in figuring out how to have these conversations, and people can feel like maybe ganged up on, or that they're being called out on things that they don't fully understand, and it's not conducive for any kind of, like, I think, change if people are feeling attacked. So I think in my work role, I definitely have these conversations, even if it's not about racism, it's about age, it's about disabilities. I make sure that I'm the one who's leading those conversations, because I know what it can be like to be on the other side, to be experiencing this discrimination, but not necessarily being able to communicate it yourself, because you might seem that you're being too sensitive or you're being problematic. So it's really good to have, I think, an ally in the workplace that you can go to have these conversations with and help facilitate them as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, we are rounding up and actually at the end of the Black Mental Health Matters show, the New Year edition. And I would like to thank all of you once again for taking the time to be here and sharing all this valuable information. First of all, it's about clarifying your goals, for the new for yourself, your personal goals, and seeing how you can making sure they're realistic, seeing how you can go about meeting these goals incrementally. It's about your connection to yourself, knowing yourself, taking the time to reaffirm your connection to nature, to your surroundings, knowing what does you well, what is good for you, good for your body. It's about relationships in the family, listening, communication, relationships also in work environments, having allies, knowing those who you can rely on to support you, to strengthen your weaknesses. Very, very, very important things have been said, and we're going to put that all in a small guide for 2022. And yes, closing remarks from our guests, starting with Dr. Judith, then Dr. Dawn, Yolanda, and we wish you all a very happy new year. Go, Dr. Judith.
Yes, I just want to say what an inspiration you both are. Well, everyone is, you know, being part of this group just shows how we're having those bold conversations. We're going against a lot of things that, you know, psychologically, you know, systems are saying that you shouldn't be doing this. But the fact is that we're all taking steps in making changes within our workplace, within our communities. And I think it's just inspiring to be with women who are doing that and going against, you know, the grain. And to me, that's my biggest take, is that, you know, we learn from each other. I've learned so much from all of you. And yeah, I think it's about learning and applying and us going forth and continuing to be bold, but also acknowledging our weaknesses and being able to say, you know what, forget strong Black woman.
Yeah.
This is me. I have support. I know myself. I have those people around me who can do this, do that. That's what makes us whole, instead of putting these expectations on ourselves to be struggling by ourselves through this journey. So
Right.
yeah, lots of inspirational thoughts taken from today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for hosting this. It was awesome to be connected to all three of you guys. And I am so appreciative for this platform. I told you guys in the meeting that it's just something different about being connected across the diaspora like this, that just really strengthens and empowers me. And I just want to say to our listeners, don't give up. You know, don't give up, no matter how difficult it may seem, how you may have set a goal and you feel like you're not progressing like you would like. Don't give up. Each day presents a new opportunity to try again, and just keep trying. Eventually, you will start to see that little progress. Do not compare yourself to other people. Only compare yourself to yourself. And that is so hard, I think, in this world. We constantly are faced with comparisons. People will compare us, but work on comparing yourself to you. Where was I at on Monday versus where I'm at on Friday? Where was I at last year versus where I'm at this year? And just don't give up. Don't give up on yourself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sista. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's been so amazing to listen to all of you ladies talk about your experiences and your careers. It's just really inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, watching. Please continue to do so and advocate for Black mental health matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
you.